guys, it's Ariana. Welcome back to my channel. So for tonight's video, we're going to be reading some more scary stories. So if you guys recognize this eye look, yes, I just filmed a video on Tuesday in the same look. It's the same night. It's literally 5 minutes later. I just changed my sweater, changed my toque, and we are going to be reading some more scary stories. So I didn't want to make the last video too long because it was already at like the 20-minute mark when I stopped filming, and my camera tends to overheat if I film for too long. Plus I wanted to get another video uploaded for you guys this week. So I'm filming tonight's video obviously tonight. So you guys are gonna get 2 videos this week and maybe 3 if I can film another one this week, but I'm gonna be fairly busy. So I wanted to bang out 2 videos in the same night. So that's why you guys are getting this eye look. And same thing from my last video. If you guys are interested in this eye look, leave me a comment down below and let me know if you guys want me to film a TikTok reading a scary story while recreating this look, because it was actually really easy to do and I would love to do it if you guys have any interest. So let me know. I have my hot chocolate candle here ready to go, and I have my wicked candle here. It smells like caramel apple and it smells amazing, and I am ready to read some scary stories. So I do have a really long story from Reddit that I want to read, and I have an Instagram DM to read, and I also have a couple emails. So we'll see how long it takes me to read this one story because it's super long. So this one's from the ghost story section and it's titled Telling My Ghost Story, and it's from the Reddit author DWP4U. I rented a house in El Paso, Texas. This is a very long post, but it's worth the read. Anyway, back in 2011, I was living in a house in El Paso, Texas for a year with my 2 sons. It was a nice place with a huge backyard for our dogs and 3 bedrooms, 2 dens, and a 2-car garage. It was a great place for the price. Also, the landlord lived across the street, so he was always close by if I needed him. Shortly after moving in, a matter of weeks, I was in my bedroom watching TV and unwinding from a long day. I was unemployed at the time and had received a severance check from my ex-employer and was living off that for a while as I was job searching. My bedroom was right across the hall from my youngest son's, and my older son had his bedroom next door to mine. He was disabled, and there were times I would have to get up in the middle of the night if he needed to use the bathroom. Late that night, I heard singing coming from the AC vents, and I assumed it was my son's girlfriend, who had just moved in with us and had a great singing voice. I chalked it up to that and told myself that I would speak to my son about it in the morning. The following morning, I asked my son about it with his girlfriend there, and he told me that he thought the singing was coming from my room. They thought maybe I was watching something on TV and had just turned up theirs to block out the song. Weird. This house was an older house. It was built in 1959. It was built in an L shape, with one side of the L having bedrooms and bathrooms, and the other side had the den, dining room, kitchen, and another room that could be used as an office or spare bedroom, and ended with the garage. All doors and windows had wrought iron. It started that when we would leave the house, we would lock the wrought iron door going into the house from the garage, and many times upon our return, the door would be unlocked. The same happened when we were in the house. The door would remain unlocked while we were all inside, but many times when I would have to go to the garage, the door would now be locked. Also, this house had been renovated. It had new tile, cabinets, carpet, and in the kitchen and such. But certain rooms had these old-style push-button light switches. They would be lit if the light in the rooms were off, and then you would push it and the switch would make a loud audible double click, and then the lights would turn on. In the hallway, the guest bathroom's light started turning on at different times of the night, but only when we were awake. We could be watching TV in the den, and you would hear the click, and the light in the bathroom would be on. No one was around when it did this, and we would find for no reason for it to be doing it. I remember shortly after we had moved in, I had a brother over to help me connect all of the devices and connect a new Wi-Fi modem. After he got done setting everything up, it was dark outside, and he asked where the bathroom was. I told him first door on the left down the hallway. I heard him go in, press the light switch, and as I heard him relieving himself, I heard the loud click again, and then my brother scream out, "What the fuck?" He flushed and came out. We told him we had all heard it and told him that it was happening on kind of a regular basis. As we were still settling into the house, I bought a touch-sensitive lamp that I could place on the table next to my son's hospital bed, so that those times that when he called me late at night, I would just go in and tap the light and have light in his room. If you touch the light once, it would light dimly. The second touch would be a bit brighter, and the third touch would be the light at its brightest setting. And of course, the fourth touch would turn it off again. Well, after about a week that the light was there, it started to turn on in the middle of the night. But it always seemed to turn on between 12 a.m. and 2 a.m., and it was always on the second medium setting, never the low or the high setting. There was no way that my son would have been able to reach that light, as it was to the left of his bed and out of range of his hands and arms. He had very limited range of motion in his arms after his accident. This light turned on every night without fail. There were several times that I would try to stay awake just so that I could catch the light turning on and run into the room to catch our invisible culprit, but it never worked. I could be sitting up in bed with my door open, watching for the hallway to brighten from the light being turned on, but I was never able to catch it. As soon as I would start to doze off and my eyes would close, I would snap awake and the light would already be on. All this time, I downloaded a ghost hunters app on my iPhone to test out some things. That night, I was walking around the house trying to get EMF readings. They were the highest in my son's room. My brother was over again that night, and he told me it was probably picking up the electrical current from the wiring in the walls. So we decided to kill all the power to the house at the main fuse box and to check the room again. Even with the power turned off, the EMF readings were high in the guest bedroom and highest in my son's room. One night, I had my girlfriend staying over, and that night, we opened the door to my room so if my son called, I could hear him. We went to sleep. I woke up to her screaming that someone was at the door. I looked, and sure enough, there was a shadow figure at the door. I jumped out of bed, and I saw it move to the left of the door and run into the hallway. From there, I saw the shape go into the bathroom, the same one that had the light being turned on by itself. I turned on the light, my hands shaking, and the room was empty. I could not get my girlfriend to go back to sleep, and she actually packed up her stuff and went home. The next day, I decided to go across the street to speak with my landlord and tell him the things that were happening. It was then that he told me that he had bought this house after the woman that had lived there had passed on. She died in the house. And he bought it and turned it into a rental property, and I was his first tenant in the house. After I told him about all of the things that were happening, he told me that he was willing to rent a video camera that we could set up in my son's room. I told him I'd think about it, that we would just see how things progressed, as no one had been harmed or whatever was in the house did not seem evil in any way. As weeks turned into months and each night passing meant me waking up in the middle of the night to turn off the light in my son's room, as it would wake me up eventually. The doors around the house would lock, unlock, and the light in the bathroom would turn on and off. We kind of got used to it. One night, I was asleep in my room and I had the AC on and the ceiling fan on in my room, as El Paso summer nights can be hot as hell. I was asleep and was awakened by the sound of the vertical blinds knocking against themselves. I wrote it off to the air being moved by the fan and the AC. And I closed my eyes and I was just about to doze off again when I felt the hair on the back of my neck prick up. I closed my eyes tighter and told myself, don't look. As soon as I had that thought, I felt breathing on my right ear, and as plain as day, something whispered, "Mother," into my ear. I yelled and I jumped out of bed and turned on my lights. There was no one there. As time moved on, I started dating another woman with 3 kids, and when things started to get serious between her and I converted the room that would be used as the office to a spare bedroom with a set of bunk beds and another small bed for my girlfriend's youngest daughter. As they would come over and started spending weekends with us, they started experiencing things too. Mostly the shadow figure. The little girl was the one that would see this the most and get scared and come into our room and jump into bed with us. All of us had experiences with the shadow, as we started to call it. There were times I would be watching TV in the den and I'd feel the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I would spin around only to catch a dark streak moving away, and in a second, it was gone. As our 1-year lease was coming to a close, I contacted the El Paso Paranormal Society and asked if they could come out and check on the house. I called them, sent them emails, but never got an answer. My girlfriend and I got married, and we ended up buying a house in the same neighborhood, only about 3 blocks from this one. As we were almost done with our move, I was finally contacted by the El Paso Paranormal Society. Needless to say, they were anxious to come check on the house and wanted to set up an appointment about 2 weeks from the day of their call. I told them that we were moving, so the guy I spoke to told me to make sure the last thing that I should do when I left the house for the final time would be to announce to whatever was in the house that it needed to stay there and that it was not allowed to follow me. His telling me this gave me the chills, but I said okay. That night, as me and my girlfriend were getting the last things out of the house, we did a final walkthrough, making sure all the lights were off, the doors locked, etc. The landlord had already been over to inspect and just asked us to leave a light on in the house. We chose to leave the light on in the kitchen, and it had a window with vertical blinds that looked onto the driveway of the house. This way, it would seem as if someone was home. As my wife and I got into each of our own cars and had our windows down and were speaking to each other, I remember what the ghost hunter guy had told me. I yelled over to my wife just to hold on a sec. I got out of my car, unlocked and opened the front door, and stood in the doorway and said, "Whatever is in this house, this is now your house. You are not allowed to follow us. You must stay here." I backed out of the house, closed and locked the door, and got back in my car. I yelled over to my wife that we should leave, when all of a sudden, right in front of both of us, we saw one of the vertical blinds in the kitchen window move sideways as if someone was looking out. We looked at each other and said, "Let's get the fuck out of here," and we left. I almost left out one of the most creepy things. There was one morning that I woke up very early, around 4:30, and that damn light was on in my son's room. I always tried to catch the light and turn it off before it woke my son up due to his brain injury. Sleep was very important to him. As I walked in quietly to turn off the light, I was pissed that this had been going on for so long at night. I tapped the light twice to turn it off, and I started to walk out of the room. I stopped at the foot of my son's hospital bed and said out loud, "If there is something here, turn on the fucking light." And almost immediately, the light turned on. I did not realize that my son, who I thought was asleep at the time, was awake. The look of terror on his face shook me to my core. To this day, I still have nightmares about that morning and the look on his face. After that morning, I unplugged that lamp and put it away in the garage. Still, like I said, there were other things that occurred here, but this post would easily be 10 times what I posted to even begin to touch on most of it. Now for the kicker. Since I made the original post, I have been contacted by 2 separate people that knew this house and knew the couple that lived there. As mentioned earlier, the woman that lived there previous died in the house. What I did not know was that she died and stayed in that house undiscovered for a little more than a week. Eventually, the police were called by one of the persons that had contacted me about my original post to do a wellness check due to the mail and newspapers starting to pile up, and no one was answering the door when they would knock. After the police gained access to the house, she was found dead in the hallway by my son's room that was in between the bedroom and the bathroom with a light that would turn on and off at all times of the night. Also, I was told that the lady that lived in the house became very angry and hateful as she grew older. She was paranoid and developed dementia. She became so hateful and cruel that she alienated all of her family, even her husband, who eventually moved out and paid the bills while she lived there alone. When he passed, the husband, the lady kept the urn with his ashes on the kitchen table that looked out into the front driveway, the same window that had the vertical blinds pushed sideways as if something or someone was looking out at me and my wife at the time, the last time we left the house. I was told that the room that my son slept in, that as the lady suffered more and more from dementia, she made a shrine of sorts, with paper after paper taped to the wall, asking God to forgive her, to not hate her, to forgive her and her family, to love her. The same wall, when my son was set up in that room, had his medals from track and cross country, pictures of his friends, newspaper articles, etc. I was even told by the same person that when she was younger, one of the lady's daughters told her that she did not like being in that room because a dark smoke would come out of the outlet at night, the same outlet that my son had his touch lamp plugged into. This means there was also something in that house even while the couple that lived there were both alive. As told to me by the same witness, the house was first built in a subdivision back in 1959. I wonder now if it was built over something. Believe me when I say that there was so much more that happened in that house that I did not cover. So much, in fact, that I had always thought about writing about it as a book. My own tests and traps that I set up to try to document proof were kind of crazy. I went so far as dusting the metal dome of the touch lamp with flour just to see if there would be prints. Running thread the same color as the carpet an inch from the floor across my son's doorway so that it was almost unseen, hoping to see the string snapped from whatever was entering my son's room at night. But I never caught anything. It's been years since I've lived there, and the house is very close to my son's mother's house. The time that I have to go over there, I make it a point to drive by this place. There are new tenants there. Well, not new, as they have lived there since shortly after I left. I always wonder if they too are having experiences. Ghosts are real, hauntings are real. I think and I believe that because both my son and I both had very close calls with almost dying, which is another story for another time. That this made us more susceptible and open to the entities in that house. Anyway, the story is all true, the house is real. I do not know if the new tenants have any experiences, and I have no reason to go back to the house and find out. I hope you believe me. And that's how they ended the story. Holy crap. Thank you so much for allowing me to read your story. That is absolutely so scary. That is so much that happened, and I don't even know. Like, I agree with you. I would have tried to set up traps too to like catch something, to get proof or something, because that's so fucking scary. So the next story that I want to read is actually from an Instagram user. They sent this message to me a couple of days ago and I haven't read it yet, so I'm really excited. So I'm not going to say names or anything, but I'm just going to jump into the story. So I was staying at my older sister's place for the day 2 days ago to watch her kids while she traveled out of town for an appointment. She had to leave early in the morning, so I spent the night. The next morning, my sister was already leaving as I woke up. I went to make some breakfast and brewed some coffee. The kids were still asleep. Afterwards, I relaxed in bed watching YouTube videos and replying back to some threads on both Discord and Facebook. A couple hours later, I decided to take a nap since I was still tired after waking up early. I woke up around 6:30 and it was now 9. Plus the coffee high I had previously started was wearing off. I got under the covers and rolled onto my back, resting my head on the right side of the pillow. While I was just about to drop off into sleep, I felt a familiar heaviness come over my body, from my head all the way down to my feet. Sleep paralysis. The only good thing about this story was that I wasn't completely immobile. I could still partially move my limbs, but only to a certain extent, as it was very hard to do because my muscles felt extremely heavy. During this episode, I heard these heavy footsteps. At first, I wondered if my sister had come back home because the footsteps sounded so loud, as if someone really was in the house. Although, afterward, when I thought back to it, I knew it wasn't her at all, because for one, she wasn't heavy enough to cause heavy footsteps like that, and 2, I heard her walk into the house before with both running shoes and boots on, and what I heard was more heavier. I also recall the footsteps had an odd echo to them. A minute or 2 had passed after I heard these heavy footsteps, and suddenly, I started hearing this very deep breathing. A few seconds after, this tall, humanoid, muscular shadow figure of a man appeared in the doorframe. He was much taller than the doorframe itself. He was tall enough that his head should have went through the ceiling. The house didn't have a large interior at all, and the ceiling wasn't that high, so literally, his head should have went through the roof, but it didn't. It's so hard to explain this, as it was really odd. I could not see any features. All I could see was this massive black outline of a shadow. I remember he had on an outline of a top hat and a long black trench coat that went down to his ankles. He stood in the doorway for a moment, staring at me, then in a split second, he rushed over to me in an inhumane pace, without any hesitation, lifted his left arm up, revealing these 1 or 2 foot long claws, and took a swipe at me. I felt a sudden rush of adrenaline kick in due to the deep fear I was feeling. I remember trying to lift up my right arm to protect my face from the attack, but felt as if it was way too slow at reacting. I hadn't felt any sharp pain at all though, neither felt his claws touch my face. I can't 100% remember now, but I think he was messing with me, and I saw him stop short of tearing at my face. I felt that he was amused at my fearful reaction to him. After breaking out of the sleep paralysis, he disappeared. I bolted up in bed and I looked around the room just out of instinct, but I didn't see anyone there. I knew that no one else besides the kids and I were in the house. I still got up out of bed and walked down the hallway towards the living room where the 2 kids were, still asleep, and checked both the front and back door to see if they were opened. They were locked and secured. Satisfied and more calm now, I went back into my room I was staying in and climbed back in bed. I started thinking back on what had happened, and I realized that this humanoid shadow man somehow looked very familiar to me. I swore I've seen him somewhere before. I decided to get my laptop out, went to Google, and typed "shadow man with a hat." The results that came up made my eyes widen in shock. I went to Google Images, and there he was. The exact same man I just saw minutes before. I honestly am now fully convinced that the shadow figure I saw was and is the Hat Man. Holy shit, okay. That's so fucking scary. If you guys don't know anything about the Hat Man, look him up. He's fucking terrifying. There's just like countless encounters of people seeing this fucking thing. Like so many people that experience sleep paralysis see this Hat Man. It's like a shadow figure with a top hat, a trench coat, and it's fucking terrifying. Holy shit, I have goosebumps all over my body. I'm not gonna be able to fucking sleep later. Holy crap, that is so scary. Thank you so much for sending me your story. I have to stop here because my little heat thing on my camera is flashing, telling me that my camera is too hot. So I'm gonna end the video here, but thank you so much for sending me these stories. That was absolutely fucking terrifying. I fucking hate that so much. Both of those stories were so scary. Thank you so much for allowing me to read them. And oh my God, I have no words because they're both so fucking creepy. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you guys did enjoy this video, please make sure to give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below for more content like this, and I will see you guys at the next video. Bye.